Around the World in 80 Years is the second episode of the first season of Wings, and I love this episode. It's one that I remember quite well from the first time I watched this, largely because of the character of Howard, who I'll talk about in a moment. But a few things very quickly. If you're watching this in the UK on Amazon Prime, I've mentioned before, only season 1 is available on Amazon Prime in the UK. The episodes are in the wrong order. I got 7 minutes into what should have been the second episode and realised it was not correct. So that's worth bearing in mind if you're watching them on Amazon. Also, the quality on Amazon is terrible. So I'm kind of glad that there's only one season on there. I have now bought the DVD. So let's hope the quality of the DVD is much better. And that aside, the episode is brilliant. So of course there will be spoilers from now as I discuss pretty much everything that happens in the episode and things that I liked, things that I loved, things that I thought were particularly interesting. So Howard Banks is played by Richard Erdman, and he's been sitting in the airport for a few days. And Lowell has actually been talking to him. And Lowell is the one who reveals that he's been travelling around the world. And he is when he talks to Faye learns that he's only 40 minutes away from completing his journey. He just needs to go back to New Bedford. He's flown around the whole world. That's amazing. But he can't go back because he'll die. And that doesn't make any sense. But we find out more about that, but that's later on in the episode, so I will come back to that. The other part of the episode focuses on the fact that Helen is fed up of never getting callbacks for auditions. So Brian suggests that when she goes to a symphony audition, Helen plays the cello, she dresses more sexily. And Helen, desperate for this, starts to consider it. But then she starts to wonder if she were to dress more sexily and get the call back and then get the gig, would it be because of her talent or because she dressed more sexily and she has this moral dilemma and she has an audition coming up? What is she going to do? That part of the episode I thought was really interesting, really thought-provoking, and then she goes to the audition, and despite all of her efforts, things don't go well again. And it looks like it's going to. She gets a call back, and then it turns out that the phone call is actually not a call back and is just because she hit the maestro's car with her cello on the way out. A little bit awkward. And then we have a really interesting moment between her and Joe, where Joe is really uncomfortable because Helen's asking him if she's sexy. Does she look sexy in this dress? And then Joe says, well, do I look sexy? And we have a really interesting moment. They're not breaking down the friendship barrier, but there is, it seems like there's a hint of something there. If they weren't friends in another life, could they be together? And I think that that's really interesting. So that part of the narrative I thought was really good fun and very well done. Now back to Howard. Howard reveals to Faye that actually the reason he can't go back to New Bedford is because he made a pact with the Lord. And he said, if you allow me the ability to go around the whole world, I will come back and I can die and I will be a happy man. And of course, the time has come for him to go home. And he thinks that if he goes home, he's going to die. And it's obviously on the one hand, a very superstitious thing, but also a very religious thing, depending on whether you're religious and genuinely think you've made a pact, or if you just say it as a non-religious person, as a flippant remark, and obviously there's a superstitious element. But Faye pointed out something that I'd never thought of, because I would never make a pact with the Lord that I didn't intend on keeping, or a promise that I didn't expect to be followed through, because I genuinely believe it's a wrong thing to do. As does Howard, of course. But Faye says, and I'd never thought of this before, she says, and I quote, if God really knows everything, then he also knows when you're full of it. And I thought that was pretty thought-provoking and something I'd never considered before. So that was quite interesting. But ultimately, Howard has an alternative idea. And instead of flying the 40 minutes back to New Bedford, his plan is to go around the world again in reverse. So he's going to fly the world again, minus those 40 minutes between New Bedford and Nantucket. And it's not what I thought. It's not the direction I thought it was going in. If I'm honest, what I thought was going to happen is that he was going to fly back and die. And obviously you can read into that, or could read into that, what you want. Either it is the religious aspect and he did make a pact and the pact was fulfilled, or it's just a huge coincidence and these things happen. You could read into it what you want, but that's not the direction it took, and what he ultimately decided to do I thought was still pretty funny. So really thoroughly enjoyed the episode. Definitely looking forward to watching the rest of the season, the first season. Really hoping the DVD arrives soon. It is obviously an import because this was never released in the UK. So despite the fact that only season 1 is on Amazon Prime, as long as the DVD quality is much better, that's completely fine with me. I'm looking forward to that. Fingers crossed it works out well. But for now, I really, really thoroughly enjoyed this episode and cannot wait to watch the rest again.